All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining the marketing show. My name is Matthew Kilmurry, and I'm your host today. I'm so excited to be talking with Kara Rafferty from apartmentgeofencing.com. She is the National Director of Sales and has a decade plus in multifamily marketing. She's an avid volunteer within her apartment community and association, and she lives in upstate New York. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. This is our first LinkedIn Live show, so apologies for the delayed start, figuring out some new technology. But since it is our first one, I'm actually going to turn over the reins to Kara. So in the future, I'll be interviewing our guests, and we'll be talking about things within our multifamily hospitality industry. But today, we're going to flip the script a little bit, and I'm going to put Kara in control. So Kara, why don't I hand it over to you?
Thank you so much, Matthew. And so when Matthew was going through what he was going to be doing here, we talked about maybe we should interview the interviewer, right? So I'm going to ask Matthew a couple questions. And Matthew, I'm pretty sure that our participants can also type some in. So maybe we can take a peek later if they do have any for you. So I find you very interesting, but now let's tell everybody else why they should be tuning in every week to hear your nuggets. So let's start with, tell us about your first marketing role, please.
Oh, my first marketing role. This is kind of a funny story. So I was an English major in college. I wanted to be the next great American writer. And then, sometime after college, reality set in, right? Like, there's just not a whole lot of writing jobs out there. But I was looking in the newspapers. This is going to date me a little bit. But I was looking in the classifieds of the newspaper. I was just looking for a job for an English major, and I came across this one. It said writer SEO. This was in 2001, and I had no idea what SEO stood for, but I saw the word writer, so I applied, and I found out it was this company where they were teaching new folks search engine optimization. This is before Google, so we were optimizing web pages for submitting to Yahoo and Alta Vista and Lycos, and it was like a computer job for an English major. I immediately fell in love, and I've been kind of dialed into the digital marketing landscape ever since.
That's really interesting. So it was before Google, and you had the opportunity to have a firsthand seat at watching how that entirely rolled out. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. Let's talk a little bit more about when you left your marketing roles for somebody else and decided to go out on your own. You decided to start a company based all around geofencing. I think our audience, of course, wants to know, why geofencing? You just mentioned SEO. There's so many digital marketing tools. Why aren't you offering more here? Or why did you choose this one? Tell us about that.
Sure. I posted recently about Orville Redenbacher, and his mission statement of his company is one word, and it was popcorn. The idea that he wanted to do one thing and be the absolute best at it. And I noticed throughout the years in different roles that I've had, whether, in-house at, large companies like Bozzuto or Avalon Bay, or at agencies, that platforms were becoming more and more sophisticated. It was becoming harder to be an expert in all things digital marketing. And so it felt like the expertness in general was kind of like leveling down among a lot of the agencies that were trying to do it all. And I've got this like innate desire to be the best at what I do. And I just had this feeling that we're not going to be able to do that. Launch another full service digital marketing agency and be the best soup to nuts. And so I saw geofencing as a particular marketing tactic that was being underutilized within multifamily and hospitality. And I knew that it worked, but the way that it was being implemented by companies that maybe it was the 13th thing on their list, it was being implemented in a way that results weren't great. And so the general sense was, geofencing doesn't work. And I thought, it does. And if we take something sophisticated, boil it down into use cases that are going to make sense for multifamily and hospitality marketers, that we could get it to be like really successful. And so, there are now 50 of us on the team, and all we do is geofencing, right? And the team is busy all the time. Like, imagine if we were, a 50-person agency and geofencing was the 12th thing we did. Like, that's what I mean by focus, because I think it leads to this piece to where we are. I can say confidently, we are the best at what we do.
Yeah, and I can't imagine how much efficiency you've been able to gain by having this laser focus. Um, I think one misnomer or misconception that I like is that a lot of people in our industry think that we're a lot bigger than we are because of how efficient you've provided, the structure here. So I love that part. All right, let's talk about when you were in that marketing role in multifamily. This applies to anybody in any industry, but we're going to get specific for a second. Technology has advanced, suppliers have consolidated, and coming from that side of the world, I can confidently say there is this push in the marketplace that our multifamily operators, third parties, should go with 1, 2, or 3 solutions that do it all. And I know you just spoke about how you love geofencing and you want to be the best at it. And you've kind of given a compelling reason to go with us for geo or go with a separate vendor for SEO, et cetera. But sitting in the operator seat, you have a lot of contacts, you have a lot of dashboards, you have all this stuff. How did you go about making the decision when you would go with a larger provider or a smaller provider? Because you can't always choose them all, right? So kind of talk me through that. And if we need to break it out, break it out.
Yeah, I think like many things in life, it is kind of somewhere in the middle. So I think there are clear differentiations and like levels above for certain things. So we'll take creative for one, right? There's a much bigger gap between like a creative agency and maybe somebody who is just kind of dabbles in creative, right? You're going to get, I mean, the output is going to be massively different. Whereas then maybe another technology, it's a little bit closer. And so as I've had to choose who we're going to partner with, I've always wanted to go with the best solution because I want that competitive advantage. I want to be the first to do things that will gain the trust from the people internally that are our clients, which is asset managers, ownership groups. I want them to know that when they invest in us, that they are getting the absolute best marketing suite of products out there. But then also, I want to create competitive advantages at the local level for the properties that are under my charge, and I think if you maintain that mindset, then it's a pretty easy decision. It is not to go with every one-off solution, but it's to pick the ones that really provide you that extra advantage.
It must feel like a full-time job vetting that out at times. I mean, sitting in the owner's seat, you are probably approached dozens of times a day by different people trying to sell you something. So that must be exhausting.
Oh my gosh, there is no harder job in marketing than the marketing manager at a property management company, especially if it's third party managed. And it's I remember being at a point to where I would start most of my emails with my apologies for the delay in response, comma, because there's just
that
so
was
much.
that was an auto-generated response. You just
Right.
typed smiley in it and filled that in. Um, Interesting. Well, maybe we'll circle back to that if there's time. I want to talk more about the marketing department. You had mentioned that, that you had to pick and choose. But when you do that, there's also a hands-on element. You may have to be a little more hands-on in some cases. And just like the properties being understaffed, marketing departments are understaffed, right? So, but I want to ask you, in this state of the industry where our marketing departments, our marketing budgets are being cut, a lot, and the staff, of course, is being cut too. So you have yourself in a lot of cases in small to mid-sized property management companies 1, 2 marketing people, sometimes 3 or 4 max. If you have more than that, congratulations, right from us. How does the small department, in your opinion, take these strategies and tactics and advocate for them? Because we're sitting here talking about how they make a choice, but often we have to take that choice and sell it to somebody else. So I'm really interested if you have a couple suggestions on things you have done that have worked, or data, or something people can bring to the table to get their ideas across the finish line.
Well, two things I'll say there is that your partners become an extension of your team. And that's why it is so important to pick not only partners that are the experts, but have staffed themselves in a way that they can be available at a moment's notice, because you really do move from fire to fire. So whether it's, all of a sudden you get a call, there's a property with projected occupancy dipping into the high 80s, and it's just like a fire and everybody's jumping. Or you just find out you've got a new portfolio of properties, and now you have to like bring them, onboard them all at the same time. All these different scenarios, and you need partners that you can trust. And so I always tell my client success team, when one of the marketing managers reaches out to you, there were 10 other things that happened before they emailed you asking you for that data. So drop everything you're doing and get in front of them, because it's a stressful job. It's a hard job. But I would say for the marketing manager, or somebody, maybe on the digital team in corporate, and you've got a particular tactic that you want to invest in, you've done some testing, the data looks good, it passes all of the kind of gut checks that you have, and you're like, this is an area that we want to invest more into, but you have to sell it. Especially if you're in third-party management, now you got to sell it multiple times to different ownership groups. The best way to do that is storytelling. I know that sounds funny, and the best types of stories are anecdotes. So this is something I learned in graduate school at Hopkins, and it was very poignant for me. The professor came in and told a story, and it was an anecdote. Is like one thing happens then the next, right? So I woke up in the middle of the night. There was a sound in the house. I turned over, I got out of bed. I put my feet on the floor. I start walking, going down the hallway. The floor is creaking. And like, that's the most boring story I could possibly come up with. But yet everybody in the room was listening to it. They were following along. The anecdote, for some reason, our brains are just wired for it. So in that scenario, he'd done that. There was some data mixed in. We took a break from class and we came back, and he started asking us about the data. Nobody remembered a single data point. He asked us a few other things, but everybody remembered the story. And so if you're going to an ownership group and you want buy-in on a particular technology, don't just throw a bunch of data at them. Don't just show them some dashboards. Tell them a story. Tell them about Bob, who saw this particular ad, like on the prospect journey. And then at some point, this particular thing you're trying to get them to invest in, how it mixed into that, and that will get them engaged, and they'll remember as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Over my years in multifamily marketing, anytime an owner saw their own ad, and they just lit up, and I felt that it created this odd stickiness to the product, because who doesn't like seeing their own hard work, put out there? I love that. I love that. Where did you learn how to tell stories, by the way? You do a great job painting a picture. Did you do any classes, or did you read up on that? I'm so curious.
I've always wanted to be a storyteller. That was the first thing. If you were to ask me when I was a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a writer, a storyteller. It's fascinating to me. It's something I've always loved.
Okay, well then, what's your favorite book?
Ooh, what's
Right
my
now,
favorite book?
even if it's right now.
Jitterbug Perfume is one of my favorite books. It has one of the greatest opening lines of all time. So if you're here on LinkedIn Live, I'll leave you with that. It's got one of the best opening lines of any book you'll ever read.
Okay, well, you'll have to later go in and write down for everyone, type in what that is, because I have to go look it up now. But I digress. Let me move back to what we were talking about. One big topic Well, you presented on it at AIM in 2021 or 2022, cookie sunsetting. Was that 21? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
You've been talking about it for a while, but now as an industry, we know it's finally coming. It's not being pushed off anymore. And that's cookie sunsetting. So loaded question. But how do you feel about cookie sunsetting as a marketing professional?
Well, I'm glad that we can stop talking about multi-touch attribution finally, because I think we were trying to squeeze too much out of it. If I were a marketer who has to explain all of my recommendations and the reporting to ownership and asset groups, the first thing I would do is stop using the word cookies and third-party cookies going away and that kind of stuff. Because when people hear that, they immediately, it's like it's a technical piece of it. And they feel like that should be part of like the technical marketer's job, and it's not, it has nothing to do with that. The main crux of this is the numbers are going to change. The metrics are about to all change. You are not going to be able to confidently tell people anymore what the cost per lease, cost per lead, cost per booking is going to be anymore. There are some bottom of funnel tactics that will be able to do that, like apartments.com or booking.com will tell you that because it's in their platform. But all of the other things that we've done as marketers, it's going to be gone. It's gone. And so it's going to be really hard to get in front of people who have been trained for a decade that that's the numbers that they look at. We've been talking about it for years that we need to get away from that metric anyway. So we're going to be forced to now, which is nice. And we have to get back to a little bit of basics, which is think of your marketing spread and the types of buckets that they fall into, right? There is branding and awareness. There is searchability. There is word of mouth. All these different things. And down at the bottom is direct response. But each one now has a different metric. And it could be like reach, frequency, engagement rate, and start figuring out what metrics make sense for your different buckets, because you're going to say, all right, I'm going to do 20% of my budget towards branding and awareness. I'm going to put 30% in findability. But now within that, what are the tactics that I'm doing and what are the metrics? And then I compare each of those tactics against the same metrics. And the levers that we have as marketers to move budget around isn't, oh, I'm going to move budget from findability to direct response because this is where my cost per lead or cost per booking is. No, it's the budget stays the same. I'm just moving money to the platform that's working within this bucket. And
I
that's
love
going to
that
be the
approach.
hard part to explain. So when you walk into that meeting with the owner, they're going to say, well, why, this over here in terms of, reach and frequency, what is this? Like, why does this matter? You're going to have to start to have answers to those questions.
So you mentioned you were working SEO very early on in your career. When did the term acronym CPL, cost per lead, cost per lease, come into play? Like when in your career did you start to hear a metric like that or other metrics really start to heat up?
Well, they were there even before. I mean, when you look at the apartment guide at the grocery store, you would have, once call tracking numbers came around, and you could say, okay, what is my, cost per call, for the listing that I have in here. And it just kind of moved into, the digital space, specifically for multifamily and hospitality for two reasons. One, in multifamily, we can't use all the other targeting that most other industries use, right? And so we really just were relegated to bottom of funnel tactics from the very beginning. Within hospitality, it was always the brands that got to do the fun stuff. But if you're an individual ownership group with a couple of hotels, you're relegated to bottom of funnel tactics, the OTAs. And so that's really, I mean, that's those, the OTAs and the ILSs have really created that mindset over the years. But now, that we can show TV commercials in a digital way, we can, get in front of people as they cross a specific threshold, or if they have certain, behavior within social media. There's just a lot of ways for us to affect the stream of people coming into the bottom of funnel tactics. So I think the sunsetting of third-party cookies is going to help. It's really going to help us marketers finally be able to have a greater set of tools to use.
So interesting. So interesting. Thank you for going there. I love hearing and learning more about it. I was just reading the blog on the website about it because I know I need more education on it. So yeah, I think we all need more education and being prepared. So a couple last questions for you. What do you want the listeners to learn throughout the series that you're having Thursdays at 1 o'clock, the marketing show?
Thursdays at 1 o'clock. We're gonna keep posting on LinkedIn. Join if you can. I'll be interviewing various people within the industries. Please, if you would like to join, reach out to me. And I think it's just going to be 15 minutes, 20 max. We're going to talk about what's on that person's mind. Like, we've all got things right now that's keeping us busy. So what is it that's keeping you busy that you want to jump on the show and talk about, that you want everyone to know? Because you've just spent, a week of your life trying to figure this thing out. And it's like, oh, this is where we need to go. And all of us should be doing this. Tell me your passions, come on the show. We'll learn together in bite-sized ways. So that's my hope.
Okay. Well, 2 rapid fire questions so we learn a little bit more about Matthew, and then I'll let you wrap it up. What's your favorite food?
Favorite food is unfortunately pizza. And I think there was no problem in my 20s, and now it's an issue. Now it's an issue, but pizza by far, for sure.
We're gonna have to get you a good slice of New York pizza. No one makes it like us do up here. You mentioned that you in 2001 started your digital marketing career. So now I'm dying to ask. You don't need to tell us the full name, but what was the domain for your first email? Was it at Juno? Was it at AOL? Do you remember?
Well, I was enough of a computer geek that I was able to create my own domain and own email address way back then. So I've had Kilmurry.net for a long time. And back then people were super impressed. They were like, Matt at Kilmurry.net? Like, really? Back then it was like an impressive thing. So that was my first email address.
Thank you for sharing. I'll let you wrap up today.
Well, thank you, Kara. Thank you so much for jumping on and being my very first guest and being the host as well. And thank all of you on LinkedIn who stuck around. I really appreciate it. I hope that you join me again. My next guest will be Wendy Copeland, Marketing Director at Bell Partners. That will be on March 14th, unless we have somebody for next week. Then we'll be discussing how to hire and structure an effective property marketing team. Until then, enjoy the journey, my friend.